Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
All right, welcome to our special March Madness edition of the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. It's Jeff Sharon here along with Eric Lopez, and joining us from somewhere on the roads of Orlando is CBS Sports college basketball analyst and UCF men's basketball alumni, Mike O'Donnell. Mike, what is going on? It's the most wonderful time of year, right? Christmas in March.
I'm driving over to a meeting right now that I don't want to go to because all I want to do is just sit on the couch, watch these games, a little pizza, and because it really is. I mean, the air tastes different this morning. It's a special time, man. It really is. It's like a holy experience.
And for the first time since I can't believe I'm about to say this, for the first time since before you were a UCF Knight, the UCF Knights are in the NCAA Tournament. Let me just ask you in general, as a guy who played for the program, I mean, you transferred over from North Carolina State, where you did play in the NCAA Tournament in 2 games worth, in fact.
Yep.
But as a guy who considers himself, to that extent, a UCF guy, what does it mean for you as an alum to see the Knights in the dance for the first time in a decade and a half?
Hard not to walk around a combination of with a huge smile on your face because of the direction of the program, and I keep getting these constant flashbacks of nostalgia. I can guys, I can distinctly remember because I was redshirting the year the last time UCF was in the tournament when they lost to UConn, and that was sort of like it was I was in Clearwater, not sitting on my couch, just standing in front of my couch with my parents watching the game because I remember it was still sunny out, it was an afternoon game, and it was just this it was so cool to see this group from the Atlantic Sun play in this really tight ball game against UConn, and Gary Johnson went berserk. They couldn't guard him. I think he hit 6 threes. Kingsley Edwards was playing great. That was pre-Will Bakanowski concussion protocol, so you had back in there that was roughing it up, and it was it was awesome. And coming back, driving back over to Orlando, even though those guys lost, and meeting them at the bus, it's just it's an amazing thing because you grew up as a kid watching it, and even to be a part of it as a redshirt player because I transferred from NC State over to UCF, it was just this beaming glow of pride. It's a very special thing.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's really. What's funny about that is I was in Tampa. I remember at that time, actually not too far away from where you were. I was at my then girlfriend's house watching the game and watching Gary go ballistic in that second half against a really good UConn team that had Denham Brown and Charlie Villanueva and Rudy Gay was on that team. Those are It's funny how it seems so long ago and yet it seems like yesterday when you think about it.
I remember being in that practice to prepare for that game, and it was you guys will remember this, but it was me, Dave Noel, and Carlton Christian. Do you remember Carlton Christian? He transferred from Marquette.
Yes.
His name was Boo. Yeah, we won every single scrimmage that year. We would beat up on Gary and Kingsley and the entire starting five every single year. And I remember Gary after that, you know, when they won the championship, I remember Gary came up to me in the cafeteria and he was like, dude, I've never told you this, but you guys made us better every single day. And I hate you because we treated like it's such a terrible rule that first year, you know, it's so mentally frustrating to sit out, but you treat that, you have guys like who redshirt like me and Dave Noel and Carlton Christian, like practice was the Final Four for us. Like we were going in for blood every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and so, but it was just, I mean, that was a great group, man. Kingsley, you know, Gary Johnson is still one of the greatest point guards of all time. It was a great team. It really was.
Yeah, it was so fun to watch. I remember I was up in Nashville. I actually called on student radio that tournament, and how they dominated the tournament that year was a credit, you know, to those guys and to Coach Kirk and to you guys as well, who, you know, were the unsung heroes I can remember in practice, and that was fun to watch every year.
People that. Yeah, no, I don't go around telling people that. It was just more of I'll never forget after they won the ASUN championship, Gary telling me that, because I just don't know many guys who would actually say that, because Gary was such a competitor. But it's just, we had a good group of guys. We really did. It was just a great crew.
This is some group of guys this year too, isn't it, Mike? And they're in the first round and the first at-large bid in school history, and to just, I guess it's for those of us who are mere mortals who haven't been there. Just describe for us, because you were there with NC State in your freshman year, and the two games that they played, you know, on that team that had Julius Hodge and a bunch of those guys. And you've seen what the intensity level is like of an NCAA tournament game. Describe for us how different it is, not just from the regular season, but even from watching a conference tournament game. Just the level of intensity as a player on the floor when you step on that neutral court with the NCAA championship on the line.
So I don't think the intensity is any different when you step on the floor, because when you start thinking about that, that's when you start playing bad.
Right.
But when it hits you the most, though, guys, and it's a real thing. I promise this is real. I felt it. When you walk into that gym for your first practice the day before the tournament, the air smells a little different. And, you know, it's funny, you know, I grew up a college basketball junkie as a kid. And, you know, I lived for that day on Thursday to when the newspaper was at the door, and I would wake up early to cut out the bracket so I could fill it out. You know, I did that for as long as I can remember. And doing that, filling out a bracket that I was in, was the most surreal, crazy experience of all time. And when you almost walk in and get the same feeling of that, like, exhilarating feeling of, like, it's the first weekend of college basketball, I'm filling out my bracket. When you step into that gym, I just remember feeling like I was walking on a bracket. Like, it was strange. Like, I distinctly remember feeling like I am walking on a bracket right now. I am part of the bracket. And it just really, you have to take a couple seconds, breathe it in, and be like, this is really friggin' cool, because who gets a chance to have this kind of experience?
Right.
You know, it's less than 1%. So your preparation is really, really intense, because you want to go out and win. You want to advance. When you step onto the court and when the ball's tipped and that, you know, and you start rolling, then it just becomes part of the game, because if you make it more than that, you're overthinking to the point of where, you know, that's when bad things happen. But everything leading up to that, Jeff and Eric, I'm telling you guys, it was, you know, you felt a part of March Madness in a way that is really difficult to describe, other than the fact that it felt like I was stepping onto someone's bracket, which was really cool.
Go ahead, Elon.
That's unbelievable. What advice would you give BJ Taylor and Aubrey and specifically BJ and Taco, the guys that have not been to the NCAA tournament? Because, and you follow the program, obviously. The storyline has been here really since UCF made that run to the NIT a couple years ago, which is, can they break the drought of getting back to the NCAA tournament? So they were playing with that pressure of getting back for the NCAA tournament. Now they're in, but they haven't been in this climate. So what would be the biggest advice you would give them?
Don't play like they did versus Memphis a week ago. That's number one, because that was atrocious. And I think everybody felt the same way. I think they were just totally and completely gassed in that game, coming back to back, just program-defining wins versus Houston and Cincinnati. I think they were just gassed leading into that tournament. I really do. But those guys are so good. Aubrey's a pro. He's going to be making a lot more money than all of us combined times 3. BJ's going to have an opportunity to play professionally. Those guys know what to do. I'm telling you, they're so wired in right now that it's going to be a similar conversation of you need to do two things. Is you need to take in the moment while getting prepared today and tomorrow morning. And the second thing I would tell you is the best way to shake off any jitters, anything at all, if you have it, which you probably will have, is on the defensive end. That's some of the things that I used to try to do. If I felt like I was more nervous for a particular game, I would focus so much on my defense that I was able to get into the flow of the game quicker. And ultimately, right, that's what these last couple of years of UCF basketball have been about. It's been about defense. And, you're playing in an arena that has terrible depth perception. Nobody shoots really good in the first game of the tournament. Nobody does, because your depth perception is so off as you're playing this massive arena. So I think, putting a major focus on defensive end, it's not sexy to talk about. It's not really cool, but that always got the job done for me, guys, when I was in a situation like that. And I think that's exactly what Coach Dawkins would tell them, because they win games off of their defense first and offense second. And I think if they put a focus on that, they're going to be fine. They're going to be in good position.
Yeah, no question about that. And you talk about defense. This game's got defense all over it, because VCU is also a good defensive team. What's your thoughts on this matchup? A VCU program that has now become a perennial in the NCAA tournament. They won the A-10 in the regular season. Your thoughts on this matchup here?
I'll give you $5 if VCU or UCF go over 60 points, okay?
It's on the record, Eric. Write it down.
Yeah. No, I'm in. That'll be the biggest thing is VCU. You can knock the A-10 all you want, which is crazy if you do, because that's an incredible conference. But they're probably a top 15 half-court defensive team in the country. And they pride themselves on being a really, really good defensive team. I mean, they help. They'll trap in certain areas. They'll apply pressure to the guards around the three-point line. It's really hard to get a open three-point look against VCU. And you could say the same thing for the UCF team. I think, first team to 60 wins. But here's the one thing that VCU that you have to be to look out from, where I think UCF has the advantage, is one is their best offensive weapon, Marcus Evans, is not healthy. I'm not even 100% sure if he's been cleared to play yet, but he's not 100% healthy, and he's really their only go-to scorer. And so I think UCF ultimately, for me, I would even worry if UCF is not making threes. The biggest thing to pay attention to is, are they getting dribble penetration at the rim, and are they going inside to Taco Fall? Every single possession should flow through Taco Fall. And when you do that, it can be just demoralizing to teams. The more that UCF is at the free throw line in this game, the better, because it's going to be ugly, because that's the way that both teams play. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean it, and it's not this free-flowing two teams that score 85 points, 90 points in a game. This is grind-out defense that will I really honestly believe it'll be won at the free throw line. I really do. The other conversely, UCF on the defensive end, all VCU does is drive. They want to create turnovers, get to the rim, and in the half court they want to attack the rim. So Taco's got to stay out of foul trouble. And VCU we talked about how they're one of the top 15 best defensive teams. They're one of the top 10 worst three-point shooting teams in college basketball. They are a terrible three-point shooting team. So that's a number you need to watch out for. I think that bodes well for UCF as long as the post can play into foul trouble, especially, not just Taco Fall, but guys like Colin Smith and Chad Brown. If they can play hard without fouling, which is a skill, I think they'll be in really good shape because VCU they don't have anybody that shoots a three over 35%.
Yeah, that foul trouble situation is just something that we've been keeping an eye on in every game all year, it seems, with this team, especially with Taco. And you're right. I thought that this is, this game right here is Taco's moment. I feel like we've seen flashes of it on occasion this season. Certainly not. He hasn't. I don't think he's had as good a season this year as he had in the past. Certainly off of his sophomore year, but he has an opportunity, and the other seniors have an opportunity. BJ in particular, although BJ's BJ. He's just consistent as it gets. But
right.
This is Taco's opportunity to really put on a show and showcase his skills and show everybody that he's not just the tall guy out here, that he's a legit threat. And the stage is set for him in this, no?
Well, there's a caveat to that though, Jeff, because that's great, and I don't totally disagree with you, but Taco Fall cannot grab the rebound, dribble up the floor, and make a play for himself.
Yeah.
Where Taco is only dominant when the backcourt for UCF makes it a point to find him. And as important as Taco Fall is, that he needs to have a big game, which I think he will. These last 8 games that he's played have been his most assertive and aggressive games I've ever seen him play. But the guards for UCF have as much importance on this game from a distribution standpoint on the same level that Taco Fall has from his standpoint of scoring. If they're not finding him, and if they're not looking for him, and they're not being proactive and running offense through him, how is he supposed to make a major impact on the game? He can offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds, block shots. If he scores 0 points, he can still have a major impact on the game. But for UCF to advance, he has to score too, because then that clogs everything up in the lane, and it's more freedom of movement for Terrell Allen, who I think is the unsung hero of this team, and BJ and Aubrey Dawkins. But if the backcourt for UCF is not making it a priority to find him in the low post, that's a problem to me. I think that's where you run into some trouble, and that's where Taco Fall, can't take all the blame if they're not actually looking for him.
Yeah. All right. Last question.
Well,
go ahead, Eric.
I'll say this
I'm sorry.
real quick. We'll expand on this. I think the backcourt is pivotal just from protecting the basketball. VCU is very good at turning you over. And, Mike, when UCF has struggled offensively at times, it's because they've been sloppy with the basketball, been careless with the basketball, or hasn't set the offense really on set. Usually a lot of times they wouldn't set their offense until the clock is running. So I think that's a pivotal part, too, for the backcourt and Terrell Allen and BJ to protect the basketball and execute this offense, because possessions in this game are going to be very valuable.
That's the number one scatter report key for opposing teams, is can they apply as much pressure to the UCF backcourt as possible? Because you're right, that is not something they're great at, is breaking the press. The reason why teams have such a hard time pressing UCF is because they can't score against UCF all the time. And you got to score to set up in your press. So I think if they're sending VCU to the free throw line and that enables VCU to hop into a press, then that's a problem. But you're right, Eric. That's a big deal. That's how Memphis beat UCF twice, and that's how Houston really applied so much pressure to the guards when they played UCF at home. That can absolutely disrupt this UCF team. There's no question about it.
Last question for you, Mike, because I know you got to go. I'm not going to ask you about UCF's chances against Duke should they get there. But what I will say, or what I will ask is, what do you think are UCF's chances out of 10 or out of 100 that they get to the Sweet 16? And what would be the key? What would be the number one fundamental reason that they were able to do it?
Okay, so the first part of your question is, I would say let's do a scale out of 1 to 10. You ready?
Okay.
Because I think America would give UCF a 0 out of 10 to advance at Duke. I'm going to give them a 5 out of 10 chance.
Whoa, Mike.
Yeah, hot take, right? Crazy hot take. Here's why. It's interesting. Duke is. I think Duke's the second best team in the country. They do one thing really well. They apply so much pressure against you at the rim, right? Zion Williamson puts his head down. He's a freight train. R.J. Barrett has very little wiggle in his game. He's a very, nose down, north-south, I'm going to get to the rim, I'm going to do an 8-foot floater. Same thing with Trey Jones, Cam Reddish, all those guys. They have zero, unless Jack O'Connell's making perimeter shots, they have 0 3-point shooting. In some sense, they're very similar to VCU. So that's where actually UCF excels against teams like that who try to attack the rim, because it's so hard to emulate what Taco Fall's presence around the rim is. It's so difficult that I think Taco Fall might be the one player in the country that can really actually frustrate Zion Williamson. Because all Zion Williamson wants to do is they run the same play. It's an ISO play. Zion Williamson catches it at the free throw line. He drives left at the rim, and he makes a play. There is nobody in the country like Taco Fall, because you're playing against a 7-footer plus a broomstick. So if Taco Fall can play 30 to 32 minutes in a game like that and stay under 4 fouls, that game will be a lot closer than people think. Because if Duke is not creating offense, if UCF's taking care of the ball and they're not turning it over, Duke does not have any perimeter shooting whatsoever. They don't. It's not a hot take. I mean, they don't shoot the 3-ball well. They don't stretch the defense, but they have 2 of the best driving wings in college basketball. But the problem is there is no player in college basketball like Taco Fall. I think people are underestimating that, which is why I think that game could be a lot closer than people think. If Taco Fall stays out of foul trouble, and the magic number is 10, if UCF has 10 or less turnovers against Duke, that's a potential single-digit ball game.
Wow. All right. Where are you going? All right. Before you go, where are you going to be watching the tournament game on Friday night?
I'll be in the rocking chair, rocking my 8-week-old son who has a cold right now.
Oh my gosh, man!
I'll be covered in newborn snot. How do you like that visual? But I will be locked into that TV for sure.
All right, man. Keep the volume down. Mike O'Donnell from CBS Sports joining us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, previewing UCF's game against VCU and hopefully points beyond. We'll try and get you and Annie try and get some sleep. We'll talk to you again, Mike. All right? Safe travels.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
All right, thanks again to Mike. MOD43 is his Twitter handle, which you guys should know by now. Wow, Mike dropping the... well, he says it's not that much of a hot take. I mean, but there are very few people who we talk to on a regular basis, Eric, that like know basketball as intimately as Mike. And I mean, it shows. Obviously, he works for CBS Sports, for crying out loud. But
ESPN Plus, he does ESPN 3. I mean, he did the American Digital Network.
Yeah,
I mean, he does it all. He was part of all week there in Memphis. So
yeah, he's the hardest working man in show business, and he really does believe that. And you know, if he says it, I believe
everything he said about Duke is accurate. As somebody who follows the sport closely in the ACC, it's all accurate. The issue, and he mentioned it, is the foul issue. If Taco gets in foul trouble, that could be an issue. But I mean, UCF's defensively could. I do think UCF could present some issues for Duke. I'm not going to pick them to win, but I don't think that'll be a blowout like I think some people might think. But look, I mean, I'm locked in on the VCU game because I think the VCU game is going to be one of the better games. I'm not, of the opening round. I mean, I think it's going to be a good game. Brian Murphy, who is recovering it in South Carolina. Thursday, they had their press conferences. He has tweeted out that Marcus Evans, who's the star point guard that we talked about, Mike mentioned about his status, he did have a spot at the media interview table for VCU's presser. He was at the press conference there. So I think Marcus Evans will play. How effective he will be, who knows? We'll see what happens. Some interesting comments, by the way. Mike Krzyzewski said Johnny Dawkins is Duke's first great player of all time. That was Mike Krzyzewski's quote. He believed in us. He started this. He started it. High praise from Coach K on Johnny Dawkins. Mike Krzyzewski said they both talked frequently during the season, but they have not talked since the bracket was released. Mike Krzyzewski's under the weather apparently. So those are some of the highlights from the press conference. At least from up there in South Carolina, things are going on over there, and I mean it's ready to roll here, Jeffrey.
I know. I mean, it seems hard to believe. Just like I was telling Mike, it seems hard to believe that the last time UCF was in this spot was before even Mike was. Well, I mean, at the time he was a UCF Knight, but before he could play, And I tell you, I'm going to be really excited to see it. I know it's a late game. 9:40 p.m. Eastern on CBS, but we talked about it in our regular show this week that went up earlier on Thursday. That this is the time. This is the time to make it happen for UCF and a big stage with Taco Fall, BJ Taylor, Aubrey, and all these guys. Not just in the first round game, but if they are able to get through VCU, there are going to be a lot of eyeballs on UCF watching. Most likely, of course, Duke. In that second round, I know I keep couching it, but yeah,
I think don't you feel locally, Jeff? People will tune in as well. I mean,
definitely,
the casual person will tune in. I'm going to look at this. Is one of the things I'll be working on next week and beyond in the Black and Gold Banneret is I'm going to try and find a local number for this game because I feel like this will be the most watched UCF basketball game locally. Don't you think? Because just because there's more exposure to the program now than there was, say, 14 years ago. I mean, I remember that UConn game was an early afternoon game.
Right.
This one's going to be a late night game. Everybody should be home or at a watch party. I just feel this will be the most watched game, especially if it's Duke, because you don't have to be a college basketball fan to know who Duke is and who Zion Williamson is and who Mike Krzyzewski is.
Right. First things first, though. Got to get through VCU. Yeah. It's a very good team in their own right, like Mike was talking about. A-10 regular season champ. This game will not be easy for UCF, but again, we'll see how they do with, I suppose, a limited Marcus Evans. Yeah, I mean, it's this nature of the tournament. Survive in advance, like we always say. Survive in advance. All right. So that will wrap us for at least this weekend. If crazy stuff happens, what do you think, Eric? We'll have another emergency podcast? Why not?
Who knows? We've had a great week of content. We had Taylor Young on Sunday night when the brackets came out, breaking down what it meant for the program, so you could check that out. Obviously, we had our regular episode, which we also went in depth on the women's side. They play on Friday night against Arizona State, so we went there in detail there. We also broke down the TV deal for the American Conference because, we need more news this week. That's what we need, more content. And then with Mike, and then we'll see how this tournament kind of plays out. We'll recap it all. Keep an eye on Black and Gold Banneret on the site throughout that, as well as on the social media. Brian's out in South Carolina. We're going to have someone out there in Coral Gables for the women's. We're all over the place.
Right.
So it's fun, and just enjoy it, right? I mean, this has been a fun week. I've enjoyed all the coverage. I mean, I saw Taco Fall had a feature on Sports Illustrated. It was a great feature by Eric Adelson there. And so, I mean, that's what's so awesome about this is the coverage and the content that's out there now with the program exposure is tremendous. And by the way, they're going to be called by the marquee group. They're going to be on CBS. They're not on True TV, with all respect to True Television. They're on CBS. I mean, that's as good as it gets. A lot of eyeballs there. So hopefully they play well, and hopefully we just enjoy it.
Right. And don't forget, of course, obviously, when you mentioned the women, they will be playing at 7 o'clock on ESPN 2. So busy Friday night of UCF hoops. We're going to find out real quick.
Yeah, that's a heck of a back-to-back, too.
I know, man. Never happened before in program history that the two teams made the tournament at this in the same year, and here they are playing in the first round, first ever at large bids in school history, and they're playing back-to-back time slots.
Yeah. And by the way, Clay Madvick, my good friend Clay Madvick, will be calling the games for the women's game in Coral Gables with Julian Vianney. That will be the crew for the UCF Arizona State game.
Good stuff. Right.
That's the crew. They just got a little inside scoop for you there.
Insight. There you go. So that'll and don't forget to follow us, of course, at blackandgoldbanneret.com for all the latest. Follow us at UCF_Banneret. Don't forget Brian Murphy's up in Columbia. Spokes_Murphy is his Twitter handle. I'm at Jeff_Sharon. Eric is at Eric Lopez Elo. Don't forget Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret, and follow all of our guys on the site as well. All right, Eric, enjoy the first day of the tournament. We'll be talking soon, all right?
Sounds good, buddy.
All right, and thanks also once again to Mike O'Donnell, our very, very good friend, MOD4 on Twitter, and follow him for all of his analysis. I'm sure he'll be watching intently as well on Friday night. For Eric and for our special guest, Mike, I'm Jeff saying thanks for listening. This has been our special preview edition of UCF against VCU on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Enjoy March Madness. We'll talk to you soon.